for those who want a bit of sort of official history rather than my making things up or getting giddy. 1975 is the date of the very first Dungeons and Dragons module. It wasn't a standalone module. It appeared in Blackamoor, which was a sort of a supplement, and it was called The Temple of the Frog. It wasn't even by Gary Gygax. It was by, and I've written it down so I don't get it wrong, Dave Arneson. Blackamoor supplement, 1975. Now, during 75, they were writing, or Gary Gygax was writing, what would become Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. But they weren't published. The first one to be published, and its code was G1, was the Steading of the Hill Giant. And it's part of a Hill Giant trilogy, G1, G2, G3. They are Gary Gygax. They are against the Giants trilogy, Dungeons and Dragons as we came to know it. Now, that doesn't explain the Tomb of Horrors, because the Tomb of Horrors was published the same year as the Steading of the Hill Giant, 75, but it's not G, it's an S. I'll tell you later what S means. We did the Tomb of Horrors, and it didn't go very well. In fact, if you watch the video, we only got into one room. But I thought it might be more interesting for Dungeons and Dragons aficionados and people who like role plays and those of us who remember these things, just to sort of have a look at how these early games look. Now, I have to admit, I don't buy Dungeons and Dragons modules today. I don't even know if they exist. It's not my world. I've got Dungeons and Dragons. I got this by accident, Tomb of Horrors, 1979. Played it until it fell to bits, as you will see. Tried to buy a different one. It was called The Glacial Rift of the Frost Giant Jarl, and it was too hard. Nobody could even get through the main entrance past the invisible giants. So we gave that a miss, and we started writing our own. And we wrote our own, and it made more sense. And we did the tomb plans by drawing them out. So we didn't have to do all the descriptions and get people to draw things as we did in the early days. And as early dungeon masters back in the 70s, we were clumsy, doubtlessly clumsy. I'm sure people today are a lot smoother. Certainly if you watch them play it on the Big Bang Theory, they're a lot smoother than we were with themes. So we abandoned true Dungeons and Dragons quite early on. Like, for example, we don't use hit points. We actually throw a dice for what part of your body is hurt and how badly hurt it is. And that means players have to make decisions about someone with broken arms, broken legs, badly injured characters. How do they carry them? Where are they in the dungeon? But it makes you care more. You know, I don't know if you remember the old days, and somebody got killed or badly wounded. The first thing was all the other adventurers ripped all their clothing and equipment off them, like carry them, and raced off down the dungeon, leaving them naked, broken and afraid. So hopefully we've got away from that. So this is Tomb of Horrors, and I'm going to let you have a quick look, and I'm going to zoom in because that will take away some of the nonsense at either side of the video. So it's 1978 it was released. TSR Games, so we're going to see that there at the bottom. Published in the UK under licence, TSR Hobbies Inc. London, Games Workshop. This must be one of the first times I ever saw Games Workshop written down, I think. Because, like I say, I didn't order it on purpose. I went to a catalogue in military modelling, one of the sort of coupon pages, and you went to the shop, you went to the various, whichever shops were selling it, ticked a box, and I ticked the wrong box. So there you go. Now, when you turn it over, we have the first illustration, because it heavily relies upon illustrations, and that is described in the game. You're looking down from a hill, and there are stones in the hill that form the image of a grinning face. So that's the first thing we encounter when we look inside. That's exactly the same as the front cover. If I come back out there, look, same cover, but it's not coloured. And this is the actual, whoops, sliding away booklet. So you open it and you get the legend. I have to turn it over like that, I think. There we go. So you get the legend of the tomb. Zoom in a bit, I don't want to. And then notes for your dungeon master. Thinking person's module. Yeah, right. And then over on the other side, you've got some sort of start. The party has arrived at the site of the demi-leech's last haunt. So it's leading us into the adventure at this point. Now here is a list of equipment. So in my games, people do their own equipment, and you would never now play a game in my game where you go into a game starting out with magic items unless you'd acquired them on previous games. Players roll for their own hit points, decide what spells they would take. That sort of hints that every player can take a spell. Not in my world, they can't. You've got to be a magic user. And then up the top here, you have what they call the character roster. So you've got the races: dwarf, elf, half-elf, gnome, human, halfling, illusionist, paladin and ranger. So the races you can choose from are dwarf, elf, half-elf, gnome, human, halfling. And then the different classes are illusionist, paladin and ranger. So there's no rogues, no thieves. There's none of that in there. They have wizards, they don't have wizards, they have illusionists. So there are some subtle differences. They don't have clerics at this point. Interesting, I think, but, you know, I'm a bit of a dweeb, so who knows what you think. And then we get into the illustrations, of which there are going to be many. Because this heavily relies on the Dungeon Master's powers of description, you are often left with a picture to give. There are 35 images to show the players coming up. And again, this is all pre-AI, you know, generated lovely pictures. These are fairly crude. Looking platforms on floors and all that sort of thing. So these are all partly things that are described. So that's a poem that you are told. Hang on. It is a message in barely noticeable runes on the mosaic floor, which leaves the Dungeon Master the opportunity to reveal or not reveal that as they think fit. And again, it's very, very, very wordy. I don't know if they are today. There's a lot going on here. You know, so for example, with that one with the gold, and it says use graphic 13. Well, there are piles of graphics. But if I show you, I can show you graphic 13. So that is what happens when you stick your hand in the treasure chest to take that out. But there are gazillions of those things. as I say, which must have made it rather cumbersome. Very, very wordy. My memory of this is that while you're describing it, a lot of the players aren't listening. And it's difficult because you take it all in, don't you, in one look. You look in a room, you see everything. But somebody's got to read it out. I mean, this one, the agitated chamber, I've highlighted it in yellow and green and left some, just to make it easier to read. Because some of it needs reading. Some of it's they don't know. The tapestries, for example, appear weed-grown rocks and green. But some of them, they don't know. The heavy trunks are empty, but amidst the small coffers hold either 1 to 3 angry asps, 2 dice of monsters, or they might have a mechanism in motion. But they're all things they don't know. But they're just opening boxes. They're just running around saying, I'm opening this one, I'm opening this one, I'm opening this one. And then you start putting numbers on them because you've got to slow them down somehow. And they want to know everything instantly. And you've got one player's running off up a different corridor. So I, as a dungeon master, have that. That's what I have. With all its little keys and crosses and cross references. But the players don't have that. So if I'm coming in down the long corridor, I've got to describe how wide it is. And if they've got, in the old days, we used to have graph paper, and they'd try and draw it. And you'd just say, you can see 12 feet, and it turns left. And they'd get it wrong and turn right, and the map wouldn't make sense. And then you'd think, well, do I tell them? They drew the map, it's not really my problem. And then you start to get the images. So the different rooms you go in, you're given different images. So they have to look at these things while you are reading and trying to sort out the map. Some, to make life even more complicated, you have 6 on one side and 8 on the other, and there isn't a 7. So again, so if you show them that, this is the room you're in, they can see what's going to happen. Talk about telegraphing the ending. I don't know. So it left, in my mind, quite a bit to be desired. But it was, we'd never seen anything like it, so it was new. And new is always good, isn't it? New is always good. So, not too long a video today. I just thought you might like to see the Tomb of Horrors in a very poor quality video, talked through by a bloke who actually played it. I was going to say lived to tell the tale. I haven't had a single role play adventure through this tomb that has ever come close to finding, never mind defeating, the demi-leech Asarak. So let us know if you've got any old dungeons from 78, 79, and you still play them. That'd be great. I mean, this one says up here, look, S1 special module. What's that mean? And you know, it always says, here, this always puzzled me, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. What's that mean? What's the Dungeons and Dragons then that was easy, that I never found? Because I've only ever known Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. All of my Dungeon Masters guides and Players guides are all for the Advanced. I went straight in. Oh, genius level. I passed some tests without knowing. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed that. I'm going to try and make it look a bit slicker on the edit. You know I'm not going to. So, Let me know. Have you played Tomb of Horrors? Have you played really early Dungeons and Dragons? Do you still have them? Show us some. Oh wow, that'd be great, wouldn't it? Let's share some. Yeah, and I hope you have a great day, and I hope you don't fall into any pits full of big spiky doodads that go up your nose. Okay, how's that? See you later. Ta-ra, Chuck. Bye. It's me again. You thought I'd gone. I went like that and I did the ta-ra, Chuck. Oh, you thought I'd gone? No, I haven't. Because I asked you right at the end about Advanced Dungeons and Dragons and S1 and what did it mean? Where did it all come from? And there was all these puzzles. Felt like a cross between Agatha Christie's Hercule Poirot, lovely pronunciation, thank you, Galen, I take that, and Sherlock Holmes and etc's. S1. In 1978, there was a convention called the Origins Convention, and Gary Gygax published from a 1975 idea a special module, special S1, the Tomb of Horrors. Now, there are other S2, S3, S4, but this is the first S module, special module, and it was designed for advanced players who had gone to the convention having played lots of the Giant Trilogies or made up their own games or even done the Temple of the Frog, whatever. And it was sort of, this is going to make you think now, and it's a lot more about thinking because there aren't a lot of enemies. There aren't a lot of straightforward, is a goblin bashing. There's a lot of that's flashing, I don't know why, and there are no clues. And there's a lot of that's just come to life and it's impossible to kill. But it's a brain teaser, which is why I suspect most of us fail. Because nowadays, perhaps, we're too used to just pulling out our swords, running towards the nearest bad thing and giving it a clonk. And that wasn't going to happen. So, Tomb of Horrors. S1, the first ever special Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, written for the Origins Convention by Gary Gygax himself from ideas he'd gleaned since the 1970s, and following on, but written at the same time as the G Trilogy, which was the Giants. They both came out the same year, but one was for a special convention, and then it got into the mainstream, and that's where it stayed. So I hope that's answered some questions for the people who like a few facts, rather than my self-opinionated twaddle. And I shall say again, and I've said it before, ta-ra, Chuck.